Welcome to the latest edition of Until Saturday. I'm Ari Wasserman, joined by Dave Ubben. And Dave,
Yes.
it's football season, man. And we're matching Here Come the Men in Black.
Ari out here trying to get our video demonetized. But yeah, listen, I think we're coming to a funeral joke. Maybe it's the funeral of our social lives now that the season has arrived. I don't know. I don't know what we're going for here.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I think it's time to really enjoy what we've really gotten into this business for, which is football.
It's a long off season.
And it feels really good. Honestly, it's been a long off season. We've had to rejigger some things on this podcast. There's been a lot of preview content, probably more so than any human being could keep up with. And if you have, we really appreciate it. Just want to let you guys know before we get into these picks, into the mailbag episode that we're going to be doing today. Of course, to always subscribe and rate, review the podcast on whatever platform you listen to your podcast. And of course, if you like watching them live and you're here right now, greatly appreciate it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave comments. And if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel and you're listening, the link to that channel can be found in the show's description. We have a lot of stuff happening this year, Dave. If you were a listener of this feed last year, it's going to be very similar. We have Stars Matter that's returning this season. And as soon as this week, I'm recording the first episode of Stars Matter in a while after we're done here. We have Max and Sam coming back. We have Power Hour. The whole schedule that you guys have been accustomed to getting, you will get again starting this week. So, Dave.
Yes, sir.
You ready?
I'm hyped, man. We have actual football games to talk about. We'll get to those in a second. But we have the topic du jour of the offseason to tackle first.
I know we always it's like right when you're at the end of wanting to do something and being eager to do something, there's always one more hold up. And I was super excited.
It's like the horror movies, right? Where you think the villain is dead and then it jumps back up right when you think that you're done. Welcome to realignment, just as football's getting ready to kick off.
Yeah, let's spend 2 or 3 minutes on the realignment situation. I've been traveling all week for work. You've been very busy yourself, but Nicole Auerbach and the entire internet was buzzing on Wednesday saying the ACC has again begun considering adding Stanford, Cal, SMU to the group or to the conference. ESPN first reported it, and what do we make of this really quickly? Is it just it just seems like kind of banana land to me, but also I understand why it's happening.
Well, I mean, it sort of depends on how far are you willing to go to get in the league, and if SMU is going to forego 7 years of revenue to basically say, hey, ESPN's going to give you more money if we're in the league, and it's all going to go to you guys, and our boosters are going to basically bankroll us just so we can be at the adults table, and Stanford and Cal are going to take smaller shares. I've thought this whole time, if they can get to the breaking point where they say, hey, for the rest of the ACC, even though they obviously aren't necessarily super thrilled about this, like all realignment decisions, if it makes sense, CENTS, it makes sense, SENSE, and that is where we are. And I think it just was a matter of how far can they get down the line to make this make financial sense. And it seems like we might be close to it.
Yeah, and if they can do that too, and people make more money and you save a few programs, it's like I'm at the point now where I'm just hoping that every Power 5 team gets saved somehow. I don't want anybody to get left behind, and we still have a few teams that are kind of in no man's land that, I feel for their fan bases, and I feel for just what it must feel like to lose your favorite thing in the entire world. Kind of like the way I felt when NCAA football video game got discontinued the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to see and hopefully find a resolution to all these things. And of course we have, Matthew C here in the comments here saying the best sport had the longest off season. This is God's way of testing our faith. Well, that and all the idiots who run college football who are hell bent on trying to ruin it. That's a lot of faith too. Well, I think too that the reason why realignment has been such a disgusting conversation for me anyway is that I feel like I don't like any of the moves. Think about how much better it would be if realignment was happening, the expansion of the college football was happening, or the playoff was happening, and you actually genuinely liked all the moves that they were making. That's the hardest part. It's oh, okay, great, USC is in the Big Ten now. Am I supposed to pretend to like that? It stinks to me. I mean, I don't know about you. I hate it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And
I think I just want all the places that care about college football to get to be able to play college football at the highest level. And that is not where we're at, and that's sad to see. Places like Oregon State, they care about college football there. Washington State, they care about college football there. Most of the Big 12, if not all of it, really passionate fan bases that show up and care. And we're trending toward a situation where they're going to get boxed out of the highest level of the sport. And that to me is sad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope that whatever this final destination is of what it looks like, that these teams can reemerge into a system or a conference that allows them to have a seat at whatever table is left at that point. Okay, let's get into some games. But before we do that, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to acknowledge some of the quarterback battle winners, because that's a big deal to me, right? Jaden Rashada, 6 months out of being the biggest NIL story to date, probably, wins the starting job at ASU. And I thought that was a really fascinating situation, and almost feels like he went from, money hungry villain from a fan's eyes to like lovable underdog, because, as you become more understanding of what he went through and how this all played out for him, it's like kind of hard not to root for him now, Dave. And ASU in general, with Kenny Dillingham as the first year head coach, it's going to be a longer building process for him, like starting with a talented freshman and true freshman and letting him go. I think is going to be an interesting thing to watch. So Auburn, Peyton Thorne won the job over Robbie Ashford. Florida, Graham Mertz won the job over Jack Miller. Carson Beck was officially named the starter at Georgia. Georgia Tech, Haynes King won the job. That's a familiar face to anybody who watched Texas A&M the last few years. Illinois, Luke Altmaier. Oregon State, DJ Uiagalelei, which I mispronounced again and again and again, but please just
you got it right just now. You're good.
I did? Good. No, I thought I didn't.
No, Uiagalelei, you got it.
Uiagalelei. UCLA, I think is some
intriguing,
intriguing stuff to pay attention to. Ohio State, there's some buzz that Devin Brown is pushing the court a little bit more than we thought he would be. And of course, what's going on at Alabama is super intriguing. So I wanted to get those out there because, watching football and all those things that we love about college football is all to do with quarterbacks a lot of the time. So, all right, Dave, do you want to get started on picks? Like, are you ready to actually pick games? Are you in that mindset?
Well, yes, it's somewhat of a tease. I'm pre-frustrated, Ari, because I do love football, but the week 0 schedule, not only are the games, they leave a bit to be desired, but the breakdown. We get nothing in the early window. We get Notre Dame at 2:30. That's it, standalone. And then some decent games. And then, of course, the best game of the evening will be the hardest to find. So we'll get to that. But it's football, Ari. So I'm not going to complain about football. Week 0, listen, if this was week 4, we might be rolling our eyes. But week 0, I'll take what I can get. I will be watching UMass and New Mexico State. I can promise you that.
You got to. I need you to up the energy a little bit, because I'd watch any. I'm over here, betting spreads in the preseason. I'll take any regular season game. As a reminder, as we go through this, all of our gambling lines or betting lines are presented by BetMGM. And as we get into the latter half of the show, we will be doing a mailbag. We have a new voicemail line that we have tweeted out, and I'm going to give you right now. That number is, excuse me while I try to find it here, 316-462-9852. I have to learn that number by heart in the next few days, because I can't keep reading it off. You can leave a voicemail for our Sunday Sound Off show that we're going to be doing every Sunday in the primetime window between the last NFL games or the afternoon games and the evening games. And if you want to text that number, you can too. So if you want your voice on the show, Dave, I want people's voices on the show.
I do too.
I want to hear I want to hear their passion. I want to hear what they have to say, and I want to play that. I want other people to hear that, and they can be part of our conversation. If you love the show, if you want to ask mailbag questions and you want to be a part of it, call that number and leave a voicemail. We will play it on the show. Again, that phone number is 316-462-9852. Okay, Dave, let's get into football. Let's start right now. Notre Dame in Ireland against Navy. We had a 19.5-point spread. I think it's moving towards 21 at this point, because people are starting to realize you can bet on college football. Last year it was a 3-point game between these two teams. What side of the fence are you on this one?
I have to think Notre Dame is probably a public side, right? They're Notre Dame. But two things. One, start of the season, it's easy to come slow out of the blocks. These international games, all the distractions, all that stuff, it can get kind of weird. New coach over at Navy, now Brian Newberry. they're still going to be running this triple option. That feels like a lot of points for a guy that's you still got a new quarterback at Sam Hartman trying to get used to things. You can limit possessions as a spread offense. SP Plus loves Notre Dame here, but give me Navy and the points here. I think it'll be a little bit sluggish, a little bit slow, and a little bit weird. All these international games, you see them in the NFL all the time too. Just weird stuff happens. I don't think Navy can win this game, but I think they can keep it a little bit closer.
Yeah, I am completely on the opposite side of the fence that you here. Last year,
I'm guessing it's because of talent, Ari.
No. I just listen. If there's any talent combuster, it's the triple option for a team that doesn't get it. Sometimes you can tell. I think in the first 10 minutes of a triple option game, whether a team is going to be able to stop it or if it's going to be a 4-quarter struggle to figure out where the ball is. And of course, we've seen Navy over the course of many years here. Play Notre Dame pretty tough. I think that last year's game was a little bit closer than people thought it would be, and I think the score wasn't necessarily the final thought that you would get from a Notre Dame game, but they couldn't throw the ball last year, dude. If you have any thought that Sam Hartman's going to be a top 7 to 10 quarterback in college football this year, and they have some receivers to actually throw the ball to this year, how could you possibly think that they're not going to just run all over this team? If they throw it early, opens up the run game. Navy's pass defense has been traditionally pretty bad. I think that this is a pretty good opportunity for them to start the new era in another country with their new quarterback and kind of make a statement. I just don't see this game being very close. And last year it was Northwestern and Nebraska, which was the grab ass bowl that we always all wanted.
It was a very entertaining football game.
I think that was kind of one of the top 5 most. I mean, if it was a parody of a football game, that was a parody. Is that where the onside kick happened?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and Scott Frost being involved in all that, that was quite the journey. But I just think that Notre Dame is a better football team all around, and if they actually have a quarterback and some skill position players that can make some plays this year, they should have no problem throwing the ball, which will then open up the run, which is the exact opposite of what they were doing last year. So this is the big season for Marcus Freeman too. It's what is your viewpoint of Notre Dame in general going into the year?
Well, all I hear, Ari, is that you hate the troops. Basically, they're abroad. They're coming over there to fight, and you're doubting them left and right.
So if the troops are playing in Europe, is that an invasion?
I feel like if they're next to the Irish, probably not. It's more of I think it's more of a business trip. What's the word I'm looking for? Going internationally to improve relations, maybe something along those lines. So I don't think so. But
that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that the team was playing out there.
Yeah, I think Marcus Freeman inherited a tough situation because you have Brian Kelly, who felt like he was banging up against the ceiling of Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And so when you take over and you win 9 games, people are sort of complaining because, well, we just won 10 games, or more 5 years in a row. And it turns out Brian Kelly, pretty good football coach, and Marcus Freeman taking his first head coaching job at Notre Dame. I think sometimes people overlook that of well, he's an incumbent. He should keep it going, keep it rolling. He kept a bunch of their assistants. He should be fine. But Notre Dame does not have the advantages that they once had. And Brian Kelly, a little bit more experienced than Marcus Freeman. So, I think you got to get to double digits this year, or else I think next year you might be coaching for your job. Certainly he's got the energy and the belief of the locker room, but, he needs Sam Hartman to be great. You got to get to double digits this year.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 things. And I think Eric Decker did a good job here in the comments of kind of mapping out why last year's Navy game was close. I think they blitzed a ton of cornerbacks in that game, and Drew Pine just was confused and they couldn't throw the football. And then Navy went on a late run there in the second half. But the idea that Brian Kelly left Notre Dame in order to go to LSU because the last remaining bullet point on his resume was to go win a national championship is very interesting to me, Dave. Mm-hmm. He goes down there because he thinks that this is his only chance to equip a roster that is good enough to beat an Alabama or a Georgia or Ohio State or something. My question to you is, do you think that Brian Kelly, who you clearly have bought in on this year with LSU, is right about that. Do you think 10-2 or 11-1 and a blowout loss in the first round of the playoff or the 14 field at least is Notre Dame's ceiling? Or do you think that Marcus Freeman actually could one up?
I think it's an interesting question. I think ultimately Notre Dame fans are going to be mad at me, but I feel like if you look at Notre Dame and you look at Nebraska, they're like kind of distant cousins in that so much of that the sport has changed around them that it has changed their circumstances, and it takes a while to get used to that. Notre Dame obviously has enjoyed a lot of success. You had Brian Kelly, but how does Notre Dame recruit and have the kind of roster that can win a national championship, especially in the playoff era where you can't just go 12-0, beat a few Big 10 teams and get into the national championship and it's one game. You got to beat at least two elite teams with top 5 rosters now to get to win a national championship. So
usually it's 2 in the 14 field. It might be 3 or 4 depending on your route.
Well, not elite team. Yeah, I mean, I guess depending on your route. I guess.
What I mean by that is in the 12-team playoff, if you are a team like Notre Dame's current iteration of itself, you are going to have to potentially play a 3-loss Alabama team that has a top 5 roster in the first or second round of this thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, those teams are going to be the dangerous teams. Like if your Alabama team, like the way that you view Alabama this year actually comes true, they don't have an offensive skill position player that they can, equate or count on to win a football game, but they're nasty on defense. They're super talented and they go 9-3 in the SEC. Like that, in my opinion, would be Notre Dame's worst nightmare. The current Notre Dame worst nightmare in the first or second round of the 12-team field. Like that is the thing that nobody is considering when we're talking about it's not just the super teams that are undefeated at the end of the year. It's also the Ohio States and the Clemsons and the Alabamas who had off years that are still get a chance to play the teams that had the best years ever. And I think people are going to get really, really upset when your 11-0 Pitt Panthers or your 10-2 Penn State Nittany Lions or any of those teams that are in that position start losing to teams that would have otherwise been out of it in the 14 field. Like, I think that you have to have a roster that is equipped to beat 3 teams in the same postseason with top 7 talent level.
Well, you look at right now, I'm looking at the blue chip ratio. Notre Dame's at 65%. You have 3 teams. The teams I'm sure you are expecting are over 75%. I think Notre Dame has been good. They're always good. But I think you have to have more bodies in the middle and a transcendent quarterback. That's been a while since we've seen that with Notre Dame. I think if there's a cheat code to Notre Dame outplaying its talent level and beating some of those teams that are more talented and quite frankly, probably quite a bit more talented, it is that generational quarterback. It is that big time talent, the Deshaun Watson, the Trevor Lawrence, the Bryce Young. They need that guy. I mean, they just haven't had that guy. Sam Hartman's really good. I don't think Sam Hartman's that guy, but I don't think we're talking about Notre Dame for the national championship this year. But they're in a weird spot where, Brian Kelly, all right, would you say one of the 5 best coaches in college football?
I would think so. I think that he's at least.
You had him there, and they, we can talk about the national championship appearance, but like, was there a point where you thought at any point Notre Dame's got the best team in the country?
Here is the wild card of this discussion, because somebody just said, Timothy said the only hope is a Clemson model. But Brian Kelly is a good coach who has gotten a lot out of the rosters that he's had. We both can agree on that. He has never had the reputation as a maniacal recruiter. He's never seemed like somebody who has gone all in and become crazy about calling kids and doing everything that he possibly could to get the best possible recruiting classes. And maybe part of that was the limitations that you have at that university from an admission standpoint. But if Marcus Freeman can acquire talent from the high school level at a more efficient pace, then you have a chance to just assemble a team that just is better than what Notre Dame has had. It doesn't mean that he's a better coach, but sometimes I feel like I might want the better recruiter at a place that has talent limitations and then hope for the best after that. And that could be a disaster, because if you have a great recruiter who gets better players but isn't nearly as good of a coach, you might not be able to match the consistent output that Brian Kelly had. But I do think that Notre Dame has the potential, if they break through from a recruiting standpoint and get through to some of these 5-star prospects that they've at least gotten commitments from in the last 2 years, that maybe at the end of the road here in 4 or 5 years, if he's still the coach there, you have a team that is built in a different way than the Notre Dame teams that made the playoff under Brian Kelly were built. That's, I think, on the table at least.
In 2023, though, Ari, how do you win a recruiting battle against Ohio State? What are you selling?
I don't know, but how did you do it in 2017? It's probably the same. It's the same sales pitch, and like the idea of, the whole Jay-Z thing that Freeman always brings up of, you got to try to find the 5-star prospects that aren't driven by those other factors, and go to Catholic schools and say this is the environment that we're. I mean, it's not easy.
Good luck.
I'm
like, okay.
No, I'm saying, but like, good luck. But that's what happened already. They've already been dealing with that. This isn't an NIL discussion. This is a Notre Dame discussion. This isn't like a new problem because you can pay players.
I still think if you're talking about recruiting at an elite level and you're not having an NIL discussion, you're fooling yourself.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't have it or can't have it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying they might be able to win 3 or 4 more battles a year than they were in the past. And over a 4-year period, they could assemble a team that has more top-end talent, especially, too, because Notre Dame's done a great job of having great offensive and defensive lines for the most part. Like, I'm just talking about, like, skill position players that get burned, in the Alabamas. I'm trying to extend hope here.
That's a lot of ifs of a lot of varying sizes to get there.
Listen, it's just like I can't sit here on the podcast and tell Notre Dame fans that their team is hopeless when it comes to winning a national title.
If you could take the over-under on Notre Dame national championships in the next 25 years at 0.5, what would you take?
Over.
Okay. Give me the under.
25 years is a really long time. And my old co-host on the
show
used to say,
what's going to change? What's going to change that shifts the sands underneath Notre Dame's feet in a way that is better?
You have no idea what could change. I can't even fathom it, man. That's the thing that's so funny. It's like, if it were up to me, like, based on what I see in the sport now, all the teams that keep hoarding all the 5-star prospects are going to be the 5 best teams in college football every year forever. But everybody keeps telling me that the expanded playoff is supposed to change recruiting, right? Or give people more of a shot or create more parity. That's what I keep hearing.
Help a little bit. It can help a little bit, but not.
But in 25 years, the sport might be very different in a way that we don't know. What if they join the Big Ten, relax admission standards? And, I don't know. Anything can happen. So, hey, Dave, we got a mailbag question. This isn't to jump in here. Before we get to that mailbag question, that's Notre Dame. Jeff Ross has a comment here. Notre Dame needs to adopt the Michigan recruiting model by going after the kids that are overlooked by programs by the national brands.
And I think a development model. That's not a recruiting model.
Well, it's a development model, and I also don't think it's a sustainable model. I don't think Michigan is going to be a perennial national championship contender for the next 10 years straight because of that model. Whereas their competition, like Ohio State and Georgia, who they have pinned up on their wall, are can withstand losses at a great level. But one out of the next 25 years, I think that's a long time. We have a mailbag question that's Notre Dame related that I wanted to make sure we got to before we move on to the next game. This is from Michael G. I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. My daughter is as well. We purposefully scheduled her wedding for August 26th because Notre Dame wasn't supposed to be playing. Got the venue at a discount for paying in full. 2 weeks later, they decided to move the Notre Dame Navy game to the same day as my daughter's wedding. The game is at 2:30, pictures are at 3:45, and the wedding is at 5. At what point do I need to turn off my phone?
I mean, 4:45 probably. Once you're getting lined, so let's see here. He's the father of the bride. I mean, once you're like standing out in the lobby, then you kind of have to go dark. I think you can once you're in the cocktail hour, post reception. I mean, you're only gonna miss here like a 40-minute window, 45-minute window at most, probably. I don't feel like any of that's out of pocket, and it's easier as well as a guy that you've got pockets. Whereas if you're a bride, certainly not. And if you are a bridesmaid, the pocket situation is going to be perilous. But yeah, I'm going to say the 15 minutes before when you're lined up in the lobby. And then once you're seated at the cocktail hour after the ceremony, I feel like you're good. You're good. You can, at that point, I think you can start streaming. Really, just lay it up, like lean your phone up on the table. And I feel like nobody's going to be complaining.
My hope for you, Michael, is that the game's over by the time you need to worry about it.
That's a good point.
If the game's at 2:30 and pictures are at 3:45, you've got an hour and 15 minutes. That should almost get you close to halftime. And also too, if you are worried about this, what I would do is make it about your daughter. Your daughter is a huge Notre Dame fan. Keep updating her with the score.
Yeah.
You're not looking on your behalf. You're looking on your daughter's behalf. And like Matthew C here, why is the dad allowing his daughter to schedule a game that's that close to the season anyway? What's wrong with spring weddings?
There is a question here that you're going to be on your honeymoon probably while this is going on. I mean, listen, I'm not a don't get married in the fall guy. I think you can do whatever you want. You only get married once. There's college football seasons every year unless there's a global pandemic that decides to take over things. But if you are a huge college football fan, it is an odd choice to come that close to the season. But I guess there's probably a reason for it. But if you're scheduling it that far out, right? I don't know when the game was moved. The choice to go in August. Listen, they're basically having a summer wedding. I've been to a couple weddings in August.
Fall wedding, like August.
Yeah, that's you are going to be sweating. There's a lot of people in a lot of layers of clothes outside. Yeah. I've been in that world. I've been in the mid-August groomsmen photo shoot. It is not great. I'll just tell you, it's not great. You need some fans. You need some air conditioning breaks. But that. You need that gap between the photos and the ceremony to get everybody dried off from soaking through all of their clothes.
If you get married outside in August in a hot place, there's something wrong with you. Like everybody always thought,
rude. It's rude above all else.
I mean, honestly, like everybody always does the shtick of no fall weddings, no fall weddings. It's like the fall is the most beautiful time to get married,
In some parts,
and you only get married once. And like, I would just. You know what? College football is great, but my daughter's wedding, I think that day is probably going to take precedent over my job and my fandom of whatever.
Some people get married more than once, though, Ari. It is true.
And that's true, but then don't get married in the fall the second time, I guess is the takeaway here. I just think that I would much rather go to a fall wedding. This is my take. I don't like heat. I don't like being outside. I grew up in Phoenix, but I hate wearing a coat outside. Mm-hmm. I would much rather miss college football on a fall beautiful wedding with the leaves changing than sit outside for 3 hours in August when it's 113 degrees wearing a jacket and pants. Like, it's just like, to me, that's like, let's end the don't get married in fall stuff and start the don't get married outside in August. And it's like this person that has the he's missing his favorite game and getting married in the heat. It's like a summer fall wedding where it's like a double whammy. So
it is a Navy game, though. Let's be honest. We're not talking about USC here or the Ohio State game. It's sort of a different.
The Navy game that you just got done saying could be closer than we think. And if you are a fan of your favorite team, it doesn't matter who they're playing. It matters whether or not you think the game is in question in the middle of the third quarter, because you don't miss that game no matter who they're playing if you're a fan of that team.
Let the record show I got married inside in March. So
I got married outside in Southern California, and people had to wear sweaters.
It's tough. That's tough.
No, it was like it's 55, 65, perfect out in front of the ocean. That's, to me, the sweet spot. And it was in May, so everybody won.
That's all right. Ari, I got married about 15 minutes from your house.
Yeah, I think that you did?
I did.
Where'd you get married?
The Biblical Art Museum right by North Park Mall in Dallas.
Did you think of any other museums, or was that just the one that kind of ran away with it?
We were going to get married at our church, but scheduling, and it was very complicated. We couldn't get the
Dallas has a lot of great museums, Dave. I didn't know if you were looking through a lot of them. But that's I'm going to go to that museum.
That didn't register, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's we've got a lot of games this week, but let's just go and spend the most time on the next game of the day, which is not the next game of the day, but the game that everybody's excited to watch. That's San Jose State at
excited
USC.
To watch, but you're gonna be excited to watch it, but you might need an illegal stream to watch it, Ari.
What do I do if I just? Have
I gotta
YouTube
say though,
TV?
First of all, I'm mad about the TV network. It's the game that I most want to watch, and I'm not going to be able to. I gotta say, Ari, this might spell trouble for the Pac-12 in the future if their network has distribution issues. What do you think about this?
Why can't you watch it? Can you not just go pay for the stream that day, or?
No, I don't think so. Like I have YouTube TV. It's not on there.
I have YouTube TV too.
There's
so
a
let's
Pac-12 network thing on like I've never been able to get Pac-12 network consistently. Like they've had a ton of distribution issues. I think they're on DirecTV, but I haven't had DirecTV in a long time. So I have usually relied on semi-legal streams essentially because it's difficult. And if they're on the Pac-12 network, like people just don't watch these games. And I think this one will be different because you have a Heisman winner, you have a lean schedule. I will be making an effort. I usually have a 4-screen situation going on game days. I don't know that I'll have quite that intensive a setup for this week because it just doesn't necessarily necessitate it. But yeah, I may have to find a stream. But no, you can't just like buy Pac-12 Network for a day or like, purchase it. This is why I actually thought the Apple deal was kind of interesting for them, because if you just wanted it sort of a la carte, you could get it. But no, this is not great. This is not great.
Yeah, well, I think what's going to happen is that all of us are collectively, as college football fans, Twitter is going to it'll show up for us.
Nope.
We'll get an illegal.
I'm sad about the death of the Pac-12. Not sad about the death of the Pac-12 network. I like Pac-12 football, and I want to watch Oregon State and Utah at 8 p.m. I don't want it to be, banned on the Pac-12 network.
Can't wait.
Especially on a busy Saturday. It's hard to find.
Can't wait until the future of the Pac-12 games are streamed on PBS Kids video app in 2027. Like, listen, it doesn't make – I mean, like, the NCAA tournament did this too, right? Like –
until like 8 years ago, yeah.
No, but like they also have their games on weird TV networks that make no sense, right? Like,
everybody gets everybody gets True TV though. That's just in like your base cable network.
No, I understand that, but if you want Forensic Files or you want Michigan State basketball, it's on the same channel. It's just bizarre. What I was going to say is I don't care what channel it is, as long as it's easily accessible.
Yeah,
it could be on Nickelodeon for all I care.
I don't know how many homes True TV is in. I would guess probably 60, 70 million homes. Pac-12 network, I don't know what their distribution numbers are. It's not great. I feel like ESPN recently dipped below 100 million.
A pretty weird thing to not be able to just go to pac12network.com and buy it for the month. Like anytime
I don't think you can do that. I'm not sure.
But like, why can't you? It makes no sense. Anytime I want to watch a new television show that's on a weird streaming platform that I don't have, I just nut up and pay for it. Like, why? And then like cancel it when I'm done.
I'm guessing it's a business thing with the distributors, Comcast, Cox, all the cable companies.
But how much money would you pay for this game? Like if it was a direct TV option, how much
money
buy it? If you could buy it just to watch this one game
in a normal week, like $1. In week 0, because the selections are lean, I'd
20.
I'd pay $15 to watch this game.
Yeah, $15-$20. Yeah,
it's
a lot of money. Which is probably a quarter of your YouTube TV bill.
Well, YouTube TV has gone up, so it's close.
Has it?
Yeah, it's.
When I
got on the bus, I believe it was $49.95. Now it's like $75. And then during football season, I add the sports package so I can get Red Zone, and then I take it off after football season because I don't like the sports.
Yeah, I do the Red Zone thing. I don't think I've watched a full NFL game in like 3 years because of Red Zone. No, the only ones that I've ever watched are like.
One time, so my dad is in his 70s. I watched Red Zone at my parents' house one time. I thought my dad was going to like throw something. He was like, what is happening?
He didn't like it? Yeah.
No, he was
think about it. He was like from the era of one channel.
I know.
Like,
he was like, how do you watch this? I'm like, this is what I watch every Sunday. He's like, I can't keep track of what's going on. What are you talking? It was one of the most frustrated I've ever seen my dad. It was hilarious.
Yeah. It's like, you just cut out all the boring. All right. Do you want to actually talk about USC as a team this year and whether or not you feel comfortable laying 31 points when their defense seemed completely and utterly disinterested in trying to tackle people last year?
Yeah, I don't. Brent Brennan, very good coach. San Jose State, very underrated team. I think this is another thing, another public side where people are like, oh, USC, oh, Heisman contender. Well, they're going to score 60 just by waking up in the morning. They might, but they might also give up 35. So I like San Jose State here with the 30 points. I also think, too, these superpower offenses, they can kind of stumble out of the gate. It feels like, well, if it's not easy like it was, at points last year, you see like sort of a frustration of pressing. We've seen that a lot. Some of these superpower offenses, it doesn't always click like immediately. And I think San Jose State can put some points on the board, and USC, we'll see if they figured out how to tackle in the last 8 months. I'm skeptical that they have, but 30 points is a lot. I just don't trust the defense enough. I don't think this defense is going to be that improved, maybe slightly, but not enough. And San Jose State, pretty underrated team. Siobhan Cordero, I think, can put up some points, and this is going to be a fun game. I don't think it'll be that competitive, but also stay tuned on The Athletic for some very interesting coverage from this game. That's all I'll tell you.
Yeah. I think that what side you are on this game kind of reveals a little bit of what you think USC is going to be able to do on defense this year. And like, if you think that USC is susceptible to giving up 35 or 31 points to San Jose State, I think that to me means that you think their defense is going to stink this year. Is that a fair assumption?
I think it's week one. I think San Jose State's underrated. Maybe if I was betting this, I might bet the first half. San Jose State, whatever that number is, 17, 18, 19, I don't know, something like that. And unless you believe in the back door late, I think they can be slightly better. I think they can put 50 up on just about everybody they play. But I do think it comes out of tackling. Like when you look at USC and you look at their failures, this is why I'm not as big of an anti-Alex Grinch guy as you, Ari. I think it's a contact tackling structural thing. It's not like they got guys running free in the secondary all the time. This is a tackling issue. It's a physicality issue. I think that points to how you run your program. You watch that Tulane game. It's not like Tulane was just like.
Doesn't that make you even more concerned about the coaching? Like what you're saying right now? That's the easiest thing to instill, isn't it?
But people get mad at Alex Grinch. It's like a scheme issue. I don't think this is a scheme issue at all.
How does the personality of the defense, where does that come from?
I mean, I think it comes from how you run your program. I think this is a contact thing. I think it's a how often do you tackle thing. How physical are you in your offseason program? I think this is a program structural architecture thing. Because again, when I watch USC,
what did that program from a structure architecture thing do to fix that?
Have a head coach that changes how much you tackle, the drills that you do, how often you're wearing pads, what you're doing, how your week is structured, all of these things. I'm not saying Alex Grinch is setting the world on fire, but I think that people who want to set him on fire are probably a little bit overstated in how much he is to blame for this.
Listen, he's back. He has a chance to do something. I just don't know what season in the last 5 years you point to and go, this is the guy. So that's the thing. Like if they even had a defense that could kind of breathe last year, they're in the playoff. Like that's all it would have taken. So do you remember how many points USC scored last year in week one?
Who'd they play? I might remember.
Rice.
Rice?
And Rice isn't nearly as good as San Jose State, but do you remember how many points?
I'm going to say 45 is my guess.
66.
Okay.
I think USC comes out hot. I think their defense stinks, and I think if their defense stinks and gives up 28 points, they're still going to cover the spread. Like I think they're going to score into the upper 50s or 60s on this team and cover the spread.
So Ari, you're betting on the more talented team here?
I just think that I wouldn't want to take. Listen, taking the points against teams that score as much as USC does just isn't entertaining. Like, don't you just want to watch the team? It's like taking it under to me. I actually just think that USC is not going to make the playoff, and I think that their defense is going to let them down again. But I think that's going to occur in the second half of the year when their schedule gets impossible to manage. In reference to Lincoln Riley's defense over the years, and to quote Ari's dad, when does it stop being a beep coincidence? It's true. When does it stop?
It's a Lincoln Riley problem. It's not an Alex Grinch problem. I'm sorry. It just is. If you change the defensive coordinator, I do not buy that all of a sudden you'd have all your problems fixed. No.
I'm with you, Andrew. I'm not going to play the USC game. I'm going to play Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a lot of points against. It's a lot of points against a very competent team in San Jose State.
Yeah.
Like they're not good, but I think they'll be improved, and they're not just running around. Like
I'm just afraid that USC is going to score 66 points again. I think
they might, but they might give up 40. They might give up 40.
If they give up 40, then I'm completely out on USC this year. I mean, that's come on.
It's week one. Ari, I can't wait for our week one overreactions show. It's going to be great.
And by the way, that's a good
bombs all over the place.
It's a good reminder too that we are doing our first live Saturday night show.
Oh yeah,
we are going to be doing our live Saturday night shows this year after every game. Last year, Andy and I went a little bit later at times and didn't start going live until 12, 1, 2 a.m. to finish Pac-12. What we're going to try to do this year, Dave, is after the primetime game. Somewhere around there, like 10 or 11 o'clock Eastern time, where people are still awake. People are still coming down from the big time game that was on prime time. That's when we're going to do it this year.
And I'll be in my office. A lot of weeks I'll be in my office. Well, maybe not in my office. I'll be on the road some, but I will we can watch Pac-12 after dark together, Ari, while we're talking about the day's games.
Okay, you want to do a lightning round on some of the picks of these other games, like Hawaii at Vanderbilt at 7:30. Vanderbilt.
I'm taking the points here. Vanderbilt.
You are a points taker.
No, I'm taking Vandy. minus the points.
Oh, okay. Laying the
excuse
points.
me. Laying points. Sorry. They're better than people realize. Hawaii, I'm still not convinced they quite have a pulse. But Clark Lee, I really like what he's done culturally. Don't forget, this is a team. They really closed the season really strong. Beat Florida. And people, leave Vandy Stadium alone, okay? Oh, the facility sucked. And then Vandy goes and fixes the facility, and they got construction going on over the season. Oh, y'all are doing construction during the season. Leave Vandy alone, guys. They're functional. They're improving. I like Vandy here. Put some points on the board.
That Stuart Mandel thinks that Vandy is going to finish ahead of Florida in the SEC standings.
I think it's very possible. I think it's
like, didn't Vanderbilt, just off the top of my head, beat the ever-loving crap out of Hawaii last year? Like, I think they killed them last year.
That was when they had Mike Wright running the quarterback. Yeah, that was Timmy Chang's first game coming off of the Todd Graham debacle. I think, Hawaii shouldn't be that bad, but yeah, it was like 66-10. It was wild.
Okay, I'm with you on that. Do you have a side on the UTEP Jacksonville State game?
Yes. I love Dana Dimmel. I covered him going back to his days at K-State. Covered him a little bit at UTEP when I was at Dave Campbell's Texas football. But I think there's juice here for a program debuting in the FBS, doing so against a beatable opponent. Give me Jacksonville State here.
Do you have to be 2 MAC teams for it to be MACtion?
I think you carry the MACtion banner when you're in the MAC, and I think the MACtion is more a state of being than a actual state of matter. So Ohio and San Diego State, this might be low-key not MACtion in spirit, but it might be kind of a banger.
Could be a banger game. 3.5 point spread here. San Diego State's favored.
Yeah,
FS1, 7 o'clock.
I think it'll be kind of lower scoring, actually. But I like the Bobcats here with a chance to win the game on the road outright. Curtis Rourke coming back from a torn ACL. That makes me kind of nervous. But I'm going to go with MACtion over the future of the Pac-4 over here in San Diego State.
You don't think that San Diego State has something to play for?
I think if Brady Hoke sees Ohio on the jersey, it might cause him some PTSD.
You might actually think that he's playing Ohio State. Yeah. I guess the technical definition of MACtion is when 2 MAC teams play on Tuesday or Wednesday night, right? Like, I think that's the literal definition of it. But like you said, it's a state of being. Okay, 2 more quick ones here. UMass at New Mexico State. I got New Mexico State at -6.5. It's now -9.5. I'm feeling pretty good. I love New Mexico State in this spot.
Yes.
Do you have an opinion on this one?
I like Jerry Kill's teams. Their teams are always tough.
Year 2.
It's almost like they're taking on the identity of their head coach, Ari. I think Don Brown maybe getting his legs underneath him a little bit, 1-11 last year. Also, Ari, I found out last night, do you know who UMass's quarterback is? We need to get Grace on this show.
Who's UMass's quarterback?
Tyson Pumachan. Did you know he played at Georgia Tech last year? I found this out last night. I didn't know that.
He was a former top 100 player, right?
Yes. Clemson. He was the backup for – who was he the backup to? Who would it have been?
What class? He signed in the 2019 class.
Would it have been Trevor?
Would have been
Trevor? Yeah. Then I think lost the backup job to DJU.
Will you do me a favor and pronounce his last name again for me?
Tyson Pumachan, is it not?
I've never been able to. I've never spelled his name correctly, let alone said it correctly. So wait, like that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure of his background. I feel like that is a Pumachan. I feel like is a what is the ethnicity? I forget what it is. There's a letter that's silent in it that I'm forgetting. But
he's like 6'4", 200 pounds as a recruit. So he like people were really excited about him when he went to Clemson. So
yeah.
It is really cool to see recognizable names.
Yeah, Ari, did you know he played for Georgia Tech last year?
I did, yeah.
I did not. I missed that. That's my bad.
Well, hey, listen, here's the thing, too. It's like, I think it's excusable. Like, we're supposed to know. Like, people gave you a lot of crap in the first episode for messing up. And I think, well, who was it? JoJo Earl? It's like, I don't even know if you even meant to say that. But, like,
no, I was just throwing out a name.
Really hard to like know where everybody is at all times in this new.
The portal era has made it 10 times harder because everybody's moving all the time,
and that's why we need the video game back that has automated.
Legitimately,
yeah,
yes.
And once the video game comes back and updates the rosters automatically, every time somebody transfers, we're never gonna have a mishap again. But listen, we're people too. we're supposed to be experts in this. And I feel like we do a pretty good job of, talking to people but knowing where everybody is at all the time, it's just an impossible thing to do unless you have like references in front of you. So if New Mexico State's Pistol Pete doesn't square up against Sam the Minuteman at halftime, what are we even doing here? Eric Decker comment. I don't even know, but like Pistol Pete better keep his hands up, and then Josh Mustachio, guy that I've known pretty well and has been a big fan of the pod here, says, I can't wait to see how the running clock after first downs this year affects these high spreads. And that also too is something that you have to I think I read somewhere that there's a study that it means like 5 to 8 less plays a game, which might like equate to 2 or 3 points a game, depending on what teams are playing, what the pace they're playing at is. But it is certainly interesting to see like what the over under trend will be, if and when we get to that point. So, we have
Louisiana
one
Tech.
one last game, Louisiana Tech at FIU, and then we've got 2 more quick segments we got to get through. So, what's your pick here, and then we'll move on.
I'm taking Mike McIntyre's guys on the road here. I'm a big Sonny Cumbie fan, but no Marquise Crosby. He's legitimately a special back. I think he can do some big time things. Not a Hank Bachmeier guy. Boise seemed to improve after he left. That raises some red flags to me of like, what are we doing here? I think
Boise might be pretty good this year too. I think people are expecting Boise to be a good football team. So
I think Mike McIntyre's guys keep it close. They might pull the upset here.
Okay. All right. Next quick segment here, Dave. And then we'll get to a few mailbag questions before getting out of here. Swamp Kings came out. The catalog of the Percy Harvin, Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow Florida teams. And obviously they were one of the best, teams of the last 20 years with the talent that they had and the way that they kind of took over with Urban Meyer there, but also were known a lot for some off the field incidents that happened, arrests. Obviously Aaron Hernandez was on that team. What was your takeaway from watching Swamp Kings, and do you have any different take than what is the general take, which is they left too much out?
Listen, it's well done. I think there was a disconnect in what people wanted and what it was. And I think that if guys weren't talking heads in the documentary, they were sort of not really given their proper, place in that. I think obviously Percy Harvin jumps off the list of guys. He's not in there. Chris Leak is not in there. He's a quarterback. So he gets featured a little bit in the early part. But
he gets featured in the early part, but as somebody who couldn't run their offense the right way and never really got his due for being a part of a team
winning
that
a
won
national championship.
Title.
Yes.
Yeah.
So listen, I think when I heard, hey, we're going to make this documentary about this team, I think you have to, they're defined in so many ways, especially because of what happened postscript with Aaron Hernandez. They're defined in so many ways by what happened off the field. And they were, people are making a big deal about Georgia street racing and a lot of the stuff happening there. Listen, Florida was in another league when it comes to getting in trouble. And, I think Chris Rainey certainly had probably one of the more memorable incidents that was ugly. And it's literally not even mentioned in the film. So I think it's just if you're going in there expecting an in-depth look at, some of the warts of that program and how it fell apart and some of the cultural issues, you're not going to get that. But if you want to go in there and see sort of how Urban built something, you're going to get that.
That to me was the biggest disconnect. And Matthew C here says Percy Harvin was on those teams already. You'd never know it from that awful documentary. And I think that there's 2 issues here. One, I think Percy Harvin might actually be the greatest college football player of all freaking time. I think you could actually make that case.
That's quite a take, Ari.
I mean, he's one of them. He's definitely in the
very
top
good
10.
player. This is an interesting debate. We got to save this for an off-season show. I'll hear your argument. I'm going to entertain it. I'm not on board with you, but I'll entertain it. But anyway,
literally was our entire team.
Okay, Tebow's pretty good too. But all
right. I know. Who would you take off the team?
What do you mean? Who is the best player on those teams?
If you took Tebow or Percy off the team, who do you think would have had a bigger impact?
Somewhere else you're talking about?
No, I'm saying if they were absent off the roster.
Oh, who's Tebow?
Again,
I think Tebow's. I will buy that Tebow was the heartbeat of that team. I think he sets the tone.
I don't know if their offense works without Percy Harvin. I legitimately don't think they could run offense without him.
Maybe.
Did he touch the ball like on 80% of their plays? Basically, he had a hand in
some of the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody said, Eric Decker said, didn't Ari Wasserman say Marvin Harrison was the best wide receiver he's ever seen like earlier this week?
But Percy was like a receiver, but
it's
also not a receiver.
Yeah, I think that
he's
like there's a difference between tools and NFL draft prospects, and
we're
like
talking about something different.
Being
here.
Like Reggie Bush is one of the best college football players I've ever seen. I don't think that it means he's the best running back that's ever played. Like it's a debate, but okay.
Yes.
But the thing that I think interesting is, people thought Swamp Kings was a documentary about the legal issues, not a rehash of how good they were on the field. And I think that we learned some stuff. Some of the footage that they got, like of the mat drills in the first episode,
that was
were
awesome.
great.
That was like the best.
It was an entertaining documentary, but we wanted answers and insight on the things that we know occurred there, but don't have details on. And we got less than 0 on that. So that, to me, is why it's catching such a bad break. But those untold documentaries are certainly told from one perspective, and you know who the perspective is very early on. And then if you wanted an it's the same thing that happened with the Johnny Manziel documentary. I'd love to hear anybody who wasn't best friends with Johnny Manziel or a family member speak in that documentary, and I never got a chance to. So that to me is the biggest problem, but certainly I think probably worth watching just to relive the nostalgia of those teams. And of course, I don't think that you can run a football program the way that they ran it anymore without having some other issues. But yeah, okay. So Dave, should we get to a few questions here before we get out of here?
Let's do it.
Okay. Let's see here. Which one was your favorite one?
Let's have it's a Minnesota conversation, but it's not a Minnesota conversation.
Okay. Is this the Minnesota win total one?
Yes.
Minnesota's win total is 7. I have yet to find a national prognosticator that is going for the over, mostly due to breaking in new starters, a talented but relatively unknown at QB, and a very tough schedule on paper. My question is, how do you feel in betting when nearly everyone is on the same side about a team? Texas, Penn State, examples of the other end of the spectrum. Do you double down, or does that give you pause and make you wonder if Vegas knows something that you don't know? This is from Jordan H. And Cam, the graphics that you have here up for me makes it a lot easier for me to figure out who asked them. And thank you, Jordan, so much for participating. And like, I'll tell you right now, my temperament is always to lean into what the opposite of what everybody's doing. And sometimes and sometimes I bet before realizing that. And maybe I'm not like the best gambler on the face of the earth. But like, if you think that Minnesota win totals over 7, looking at the fact that everybody is fading them would make me feel more excited about betting the over. And like, I don't know what the actual like he said Texas is an example of it. Like, I have a ticket in for Texas to win the national title this year.
People
like,
are in on Texas.
Are people in on Texas? Because everybody is giving me shit for liking Texas.
Well, people aren't in on Texas as a national title contender, but they're in on Texas as a Big 12 champion and a team that can win 10, 11 points. Yeah,
and I also think, too, that just like if they make the playoff, they're talented in an indoor stadium to potentially surprise some people. And that's like, I think that's certainly, it's a 20-1 ticket. So,
all right, does it give you pause? Does it give you pause that Texas's head coach has never won 10 games?
It does, yeah. It's a long shot. That's why I'm getting 21-1 odds on it. Like, I'm not betting it even.
I'm just asking the questions.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. Well, here's what I'll say. And I said this last year with Andy, and I've already broken my promise. So if you don't believe me, it's fair. I understand. I said I was out on Texas last year until they did something, right? Mm-hmm. And then here we are 1 year later, and I'm back in.
And they worked out so hard this offseason. No other teams were hitting the weights. No other teams were running or building their bodies. They were working so hard.
But if you think that this guy is just going to fall for it every year, I will tell you this, because I have played the scenario in my head of them losing a shitty game early on in the year. And like how that temperament.
You won't have to play a scenario. It will happen, Ari. They'll beat Bama, and then
I will be so out on Sark as a head coach of that program moving forward that it will be like, I'm not going to go out and write a column. They should fire him. And like, even if they lose to Alabama close, I still think that doesn't change anything about the season and what they can do. Mm-hmm. But if they start dropping games to Iowa State or Texas Tech or whatever, and it looks like the old Texas, I will lose all confidence in his ability to coach that program.
I have a lot of questions about the Texas Desire. You saw the Big 12 commissioner yesterday talking about putting some pressure on Joey McGuire to beat them again. Ari, I do think you underrate the fact that Texas is going to be a bunch of teams Super Bowl this year. And that's
you always say that, yeah. Maybe they'll just be better than them physically and kick the shit out of them like everybody else.
It's always true, but it's going to be doubly true this year, Ari. And
is it not true for Alabama? Is it not true for Georgia? Is it not true for Ohio State?
But those teams have
Michigan?
Those teams have mental toughness, Ari. I don't buy Texas. There's nothing about this program
that
screams we are mentally tougher. Coming in, hey, we want this more than anybody else. I don't see that with their program.
So you buy that USC can fix a team that doesn't know how to tackle anybody, which is all about toughness and all that, but you can't figure out Texas winning good games.
I think you can fix it. I don't think USC has fixed it. I think you can fix it, but that's
can you fix Texas?
I don't know. We'll find out. I don't even know that USC is a mental toughness thing as much as a literal physical toughness thing and tackling. Texas, I just think they come out flat a lot. They don't play up to their potential a lot.
If you're asking me if I'm worried about it and like I'm unaware of this notion, I'm certainly aware of the danger of this. It's like that Ralph Simpson's meme. I'm in danger. Like, I know I'm in danger.
And yet you put the money down.
But I'm looking at the team, the schedule, the circumstance, the lines, the skill position talent, all of it, and it adds up to being great value. And I'm going to go for it. And if I'm wrong, then whatever. I'll just be wrong like I always am when it comes to Texas, and I will say sorry, and I will give up. But, like, Sark got hired to be there. So somebody is paying millions and millions and millions of dollars because they think that he can do it. And so if they're going to put their money up, then I'll put up my few $100. So it's no big deal. Okay, one more question and then we'll get out of here. Yes. Do you have a favorite one that you want to attack here?
Dealer's choice.
In all discussion of UGA's chance of missing the playoff, a simple scenario: a loss to UT who then loses in the SEC championship game would be sufficient. No, one loss non-division champ UGA could easily be left out provided conference produces strong bids. What say you?
I don't know if it's going to be Tennessee. I mean, it might be. I think the athlete issue, I think Georgia seems very well equipped to slow down that offense. I think it's going to be something stupid like last year, where Georgia goes to Mizzou and stumbles around. They should have lost that game, but they didn't. I think if Georgia loses, that's the best route for Georgia to get knocked out of the playoff. But I don't think it's going to be quite as simple as they lose to the best team they play in the regular season and then they lose in the SEC championship. I think it's going to be something stupid.
Dr. Evan B. Johnson on Twitter. I hope you actually are a doctor, but if I didn't have a professional Twitter account, I would certainly have doctor in front of whatever my name would be on.
I feel like if I was a doctor, I would never be on Twitter. So
yeah. Thank you so much for the question. And just so you guys know too, our Sunday shows, our sound off shows, where we have the voicemail is just going to be like that. We're just going to throw up your voicemails and your tweets and your questions onto the screen, and you're just going to be a part of the conversation. So please make sure to continue hitting that phone number and hitting the comments and of course putting in, reviews with questions and all the ways that you do it. This was the first edition of the Until Saturday Week 0 Picks podcast. Thank you so much for joining. It's going to get more intense and better as the games get better. Obviously, it's week 0. It's a good week for us to wet our beak. We'll have our Saturday night show after the games on Saturday. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk about USC and San Jose State having watched it. Maybe. But we'll be here on YouTube live Saturday night after the USC game. Follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a review, like it, subscribe to the podcast channel, which is in the show's description, all those things. Thank you so much, Dave. I'm so jacked to be back into football season. It finally feels real. And
shout out to FIU. So do it for Ned.
Yeah.
Real ones.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to watch the games and have a good time, and we'll catch you guys on Saturday and Sunday this weekend. Thanks again. And that was Until Saturday.